You know, almost every single project plan has a hidden assumption built right into it. And look, if you get it right, you've got a realistic forecast. But if you get it wrong, well, your plan pretty much becomes a work of fiction. So today, we're going to pull back the curtain on that one critical assumption.
In this quote, wow, it just gets right to the heart of the problem, doesn't it? See, most schedules are actually pretty good at sequencing the what and the when. You know, do this, then do that. But where they completely fall apart is in modeling how the work actually gets done, day in and day out on the ground.
So it's a direct question for sure, but it's one we've got to ask. Because if your schedule doesn't truly reflect the reality of how crews actually work out there on site, it might be telling you a very convenient, but also a very, very dangerous lie. So let's dig in and find out. All right, so let's dive into our first section, the schedule's hidden lie. Now, this isn't about anyone having bad intentions or trying to mislead. It's really just about that huge gap that can open up between a nice, clean plan on a screen and the messy, complicated reality of actually getting work done.
Let me put it this way. Think about a piece of music. You can have all the right notes, and they can be in the perfect order. But if you just play them all at the exact same volume and tempo, well, you don't really have music, do you? You've just got a metronome. Project work is exactly the same. It has a natural rhythm, a flow, and intensity that ebbs and flows. Just getting the steps right, that's only half the battle.
Okay, so the big question is, how do we give our plan that right rhythm? Well, that brings us straight to Section 2, shaping your project's effort. We're about to look at the core tool you need for the job.
And that tool is called the resource curve. It sounds simple, but it's an incredibly powerful concept. Here's the key thing to get. It doesn't change the total amount of work or the total time. All it does is control the shape of that work over the duration you have. It's like being the conductor of an orchestra, telling the team when to go all out and when to ease back a bit.
Okay, take a look at this. This comparison makes the whole idea crystal clear. We've got the exact same job. Structural steel installation. Same total man-hours, same 10-day duration. But Plan A and Plan B are telling two completely different stories. Plan A is just this flat, robotic 60 man-hours every single day. Plan B, though, that one shows a slow start, a busy peak in the middle, and then a slow finish. Now, be honest, which one of those actually feels like a real construction site to you?
So that leads us perfectly into the planner's toolkit. Essentially, there are 4 fundamental shapes, 4 core curves that can describe pretty much any type of work you're ever going to encounter on a major project. First up, we've got the one we've already seen, the linear curve. Now, this is the one you have to watch out for because it's often the default setting in a lot of planning software. It's the easiest to imagine, right? It just assumes a perfectly constant, steady pace of work every single day from the start right to the finish. No warm-up period, no cool down, just go. But hey, don't get me wrong, this curve absolutely has its place. It's perfect for certain kinds of work, specifically highly repetitive, almost production line type tasks where the output is super predictable. Think about pulling endless lengths of cable, painting long stretches of pipe, or installing thousands of small, identical fittings. This is for that kind of work that hits full speed on day one and just doesn't stop. All right, next up we have the front-loaded curve. You can think of this one as the exact opposite of procrastination. It's all about hitting the ground running, just maximum effort right out of the gate, and then gradually easing off as you get closer to the end. All the really heavy lifting happens right at the beginning.
So where do you see this? Well, you see this shape in any activity that needs a huge initial push. Think about clearing a site or doing bulk earthworks. You're moving massive amounts of dirt at the very start. Another classic example is getting ready for a major plant shutdown. All that prep work is absolutely frantic and concentrated right before the main event even kicks off.
Our third shape is the backloaded curve, and this one's the mirror image of the last one. It starts off really slow, maybe with just a few people, and then it builds and builds to this frantic crescendo of activity right at the very end. It is all about that final massive push to get over the finish line. And this is the classic signature of testing and commissioning work. I mean, just think about it, right? You're checking thousands of instrument loops, you're pressure testing entire systems, you're closing out all those last-minute punch list items. The vast majority of the man-hours are burned in that final, super intense phase just before you hand the project over.
And that brings us to our final curve. And honestly, this is the most common, the most versatile, and usually the most realistic shape of them all, the bell curve, which you might also know as an S-curve. It perfectly describes a natural, organic process of work. You start slow as you mobilize and prepare, then you ramp up and hit your peak productivity, and then you gradually wind down as you handle the finishing touches.
This is the absolute workhorse of EPC planning. And why is that? It's because most construction activities naturally follow this pattern. Think about it. Productivity is never instant. It has to build up as the crew gets the hang of the task and gets into a rhythm. This curve just beautifully models everything from fabricating pipe spools and pouring concrete to assembling massive steel structures.
Okay, so there you have it, our 4 shapes. But look, this isn't just some abstract planning theory. The choice of curve you make has massive, real-world consequences. This is where the rubber meets the road. So let's jump into Section 4, Why the Curve Matters.
And this right here shows the single biggest danger of getting this wrong. Let this sink in. Using that default linear curve for everything is the #1 reason project plans have wildly unrealistic manpower forecasts. Here's what happens. If you model a bunch of bell curve activities as if they're linear, all their start dates can stack up and create this terrifying, completely artificial spike in your manpower plan. And what happens then? Management panics. But a plan that uses the correct bell curves shows a much smoother, much more manageable, and, realistic peak crew size.
And the impact goes way beyond just manpower. It doesn't stop there. Think about cost and cash flow. Are you spending most of your money early or late? The curve you choose dictates that. What about risk management? A backloaded activity is basically screaming at you that your biggest vulnerability is right at the finish line. And this is a big one. For claims and delay analysis, using the wrong curve can completely destroy your earned value calculations, which can seriously weaken your case in any kind of dispute.
Okay, so I think we can all agree this is really important. The obvious next question is, how do you actually choose the right shape for the job? Well, that's exactly what we're going to cover in Section 5, Choosing the Right Shape.
Really, it all comes down to asking the right questions. You have to kind of interrogate the activity. Get in there and ask, does the work start at full pace right away? Okay, that sounds linear. Does productivity get better as the crew finds its groove? That's a classic bell curve. Is there a massive inspection and testing blitz at the very end? You're probably looking at a backloaded curve. See, these questions force you to think like the people who are actually doing the work on site, not just like someone clicking buttons in a piece of software.
And that brings us to our final and I think most important point today. Let's talk about Section 6, A Planner's Philosophy, because this is about moving way beyond a simple software setting and into a core professional principle.
Yeah, just let that sink in for a second. This is not a software trick. It's not about clicking some button in Primavera or MS Project. It's a philosophy. It is the fundamental difference between just scheduling a list of tasks and genuinely modeling the work. Honestly, this is what separates a good scheduler from a truly great planner, someone who understands how projects are actually built from the ground up.
So we're going to end with this question, and I want you to take it back with you to your own projects. Look at your schedule. Is it just a sequence of boxes and lines on a page? Or is it a true, honest reflection of the real rhythm of the work? What philosophy is guiding your plan?